gents, grab your tea, grab your biscuits and get comfortable because today we are going to be talking about Queen of Shadows. Queen of Shadows is a 2015 fantasy fiction novel written by author Sarah J. Maas. It is the fourth installment in the Throne of Glass series. It is preceded by Heir of Fire and it is followed by Empire of Storms. Just a little disclaimer, this review will have spoilers, so if you don't want spoilers, I would click away now, but if you don't mind spoilers, continue watching. So without further ado, let's dive into the review. After facing her fears, conquering her magic, and encasing an entire city in flame, our main girl, Celaena Sardothien, or Aelin as she goes by now, returns home to dish out some much-needed revenge and to kick some serious ass, all while wearing a skin-tight black suit. Despite my opinions on the previous Throne of Glass novels, I really enjoyed Queen of Shadows. It's got a really interesting plot. I felt that it was very, very driven and very well structured. The book itself is split into two parts. So the first part is Lady of Shadows, and then the second part is Queen of Light. Now, the titles of those two parts do very much relate to our main girl's state of mind and her actions and what she does, which is what I kind of liked as well. I liked that during the first half of the book, it was almost like we were joining our heroes while they were doing sort of like a quick cleanup, shall we say. Celaena's main objective is to get revenge for her lover Sam's murder, which we find out has been done by her old master, the King of the Assassins. So she pretty much spends the first half of the novel figuring out how she's going to bring him down without having any collateral in the end, and how she can make the most out of this situation. The way that she does do it is fantastic, really. It's so well thought out, it's carefully planned. Once the big reveal is made, it's really obvious to see how she did it because there's loads of little breadcrumbs throughout the first half of the novel about what Celaena is actually doing. You know, she's constantly going to the bank, she's constantly looking into things that have happened in the past, and she is preparing for this final moment where she does eventually get her revenge. The second half of the book kind of involves, you know, smashing glass castles and killing kings because that's what our girl does best, isn't it? And that was really exciting. So that was the more kind of action-packed, exciting part of the plot, whereas the first half was more court intrigue, shall we say. You've got to be smart. It was a battle of wits and it was a battle of intelligence, which was kind of nice to see after, you know, the explosion of action that we had at the end of Heir of Fire. So once Celaena has achieved her goal for the first half of the book, we then move on to the second half of the book where she has a new goal to achieve, and that is to free magic again and to assassinate the king, because everyone's like, the king needs to die because he's really mean. Fair enough. And also rescue Dorian if it's possible. Dorian's chapters in Queen of Shadows, that was some heartbreaking stuff. And, you know, my ice-cold heart kind of softened a little bit towards Dorian, so I'm hoping that my opinion of him will change as these books progress, because I found his character to be as interesting as he could be, because his chapters are quite limited in Queen of Shadows, and we know that it's not really Dorian that we're reading about because he's been possessed by a demon via a black collar that's around his neck. My absolute favourite chapters in this novel have to be Manon Blackbeak's chapters. She was a character that was introduced in Heir of Fire. Queen of Shadows, she gets even cooler, which is amazing. So her story was definitely one that was at the top of my favourites list, absolutely. And her chapters did keep this overall plot very, very engaging because we were seeing both sides of the coin. With our main heroes, so, you know, Kael, Aelin, Rowan, we see very much what's going on the surface, that the whole world can see. You know, we're gonna release magic, we're gonna kill the king, and we're gonna free and liberate everyone across the country. That's great. With Manon's chapters, it was almost like this is what's happening behind the scenes because no one really knows what's going on in Morath yet, and no one has any idea that wyverns are being bred, all these collars and rings are being manufactured there, ready to be sent out and distributed amongst armies. There was one part of the plot which did actually kind of shock me a little bit, and that was when Perrington asks Manon to choose a Blackbeak coven to be impregnated with these little black stones, which will then allow them to give birth to demon babies. That's gross. And I was kind of hoping that Manon wouldn't do it, and then she did, and she sent a Yellowlegs coven in there, and I felt so sorry for those witches. But then Astrid comes along with this heart-wrenching story, and I think that was kind of the turning point in Manon's story where she realized realised that you can be made into a monster rather than born a monster. So that was really nice to see that whole story develop there. The plot's overall pacing was really good. I didn't feel that it was too rushed. I didn't feel that it was too slow. I thought that each kind of separate part of the book had its own sort of pacing because each part was dealing with different stories or different parts of a story. So it kind of really flowed really nicely with each other, and the two parts are very much like linked with each other through characters' actions and dialogue, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Okay, I know I have complained about Throne of Glass's world building quite a lot, but it was alright in Queen of Shadows. We're back in the same city that we were in for Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight, so you can pretty much pick up a lot of things from the previous two books because everything's already been explained. There's not too much that has actually been thrown into the overall world building. We spend the majority of our time actually in the city and exploring the city. So we go to the Assassin's Keep finally, we see the slums, the sewers, how that's all connected. The sewers were the parts of the city that were described the most because I just remember having this overall feeling of being disgusted while we were in them. The city itself is actually coming together a lot better now in Queen of Shadows, and I think that's due to the fact that we do spend most of our time within the city of Rifthold. I'd say the world building for the series overall has come together a bit more. I think Air of Fire definitely helped that because we went to a different continent and now we are back in the same city which the first two novels were set in. So there's not really anything overly new to explore in terms of the world building, but it's there. You could get a sense of, okay, this is going to be a central point in the story, so it's good to have a rough idea of how the city runs. Like, this is the slums, this is the vaults, this is where all the expensive kind of restaurants are, and the sort of people that go to these places. Manon Blackbeak. Yes. I love the way that she's first introduced in Air of Fire, because that was just terrifying. She's even more terrifying in Queen of Shadows because now she has Abraxas with her, and it's nice to see how her relationship with her wyvern is developing. See, she won the war games, she becomes the wing leader, so all the witches are kind of looking to her for leadership despite the rivalry between, you know, the Blackbeaks, the Blue Bloods, the Yellow Legs. Oh, the other race, which we haven't quite encountered yet, so hopefully we're going to see those guys soon. I really enjoyed the character of Elodie, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that name right, because Sarah J Maas character names still get my tongue in a bit of a twister. But I thought she was a really interesting character to have. She's very, very different to all the other female characters that we've experienced so far. So like, obviously Aelin is our badass assassin, queen of the wildfire, all this awesomeness about her. Manon Blackbeak kind of falls into that same sort of category where, you know, she's a badass, she rides a wyvern, she's got a cool sword, she's got iron nails and iron teeth. What more do you want, really? And then there's Elodie, who is a slave with a really, really messed up ankle, but with an extremely sharp mind. So her battles are wit and intelligence, and she seems to have the most amazing observational skills I have ever come across in her character before. So that's what kept her very interesting, because I honestly thought that she was going to die at the end of Queen of Shadows because she didn't really have any sort of physical skill set to protect herself with. She can't whip out a sword and start, you know, slicing people up. She's got to use her mind to do that. It was nice to see the differences between her and Manon because they kind of share the same chapters and they kind of share the same story because they're both at Morath. Rowan comes back in this one. I liked him in Air of Fire. I thought his relationship with Aelin was cool because it was like they were best friends. I was hoping that Rowan and Aelin's relationship in Queen of Shadows stayed that way. I was so hoping for this best friend companionship that they had with each other, but naturally it develops into a romance. It develops quite slowly, I'd say. I think it started in Air of Fire and it's kind of blown over into Queen of Shadows and will probably last for the rest of the series. The writing, again, it's very, very similar to Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, Air of Fire. It is a bit more descriptive, I will say, and it's a lot more funny as well. I found myself like laughing out loud at a few cases, and that was normally when Aelin does something really sassy when she's in her Selena persona. So overall, the writing has improved. I did enjoy it. So there we have it. That was my review of Queen of Shadows. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 on Goodreads, and I do recommend it if you're a fantasy fan, YA fantasy, or a Sarah J Maas fan in general. This is the 4th book in the series, so I do recommend you read the first 3. Thank you so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know down below what you thought of Queen of Shadows. Stay safe, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.